welcome along to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ed McKnight.
And I'm Andrew Nicol.
And today on the show, we're talking about scams and, dodgy developers. Now, this is important to talk about because as people get desperate in the property market, emotions start to run high, and it provides an opportunity for people who are potentially a little less scrupulous to come in and take advantage of people's emotions when they're aggrieved, when they're unable to find the house that they want to get into, and when they're wanting to hear some good news. And I think we've got an example today that I just want to walk you through or talk you through and say things can appear to be really good on paper, but you always want to dig a little bit deeper, because if you scratch the surface, sometimes you'll find things that will make your eyebrows go hit the roof, like your Judith Collins or something. And, sorry, is that a bit rough?
No, that's good.
I thought it was pretty accurate. And, we'll just give you pause for thought. So I want to give you an example of something. I had an email from Peter, member of our team, Peter Norris, who'd sent us a property up in Wellsford. This is an hour 10 north of Auckland, saying, would you guys look at this? Now, you look at the numbers, you think, this is quite good. $700K purchase price for a home and income property. So for anybody who doesn't know, that's a 3-bedroom property with a 2-bed tacked on the same title, kind of like a dual key apartment, except it's a standalone house, but they're conjoined. There are 2 properties on the same title. Estimated rental of $850 per week. So really good gross yield, about 6.3% gross yield, about $230 per week positive income based on those numbers if you used all of our usual assumptions and a return on investment calculator. So you think these are really good. But actually, you jumped in at this point in this email chain, Andrew.
At this stage, it was quite funny because only about a week before or 2 weeks before, I'd been given the same proposal from one of my investors. So he emailed me and said, hey, I just want to get your opinion on this. What do you think? And the developers, I'd heard of the company before, but hadn't really had much to do with them, hadn't done any research, hadn't researched them for bringing them on as a recommended developer or anything like that. So I offered to just do a bit of background. When he ran the numbers past me, I thought, geez, that sounds quite good. And every time something sounds really good, I dig a little bit deeper, because so many rubbish investments in the market that you really have to work hard to get one. And so not saying that people can't find good investments, but it doesn't happen as often as, the average ones.
Or usually it's either let's dig into this and go get these properties ourselves for the investors we work with. Let's go get the good deal, or let's see if it stacks up.
And actually, funnily enough, then about a week into me, or a few days of me and doing a bit of research on this development company, someone else messaged me. And this is one of my other investors. And he said, hey, I just want to get your feedback on this company. I thought, this is very weird. And that's when I was alerted to the fact that there's an involvement with one particular guy from this firm who very openly said he had somewhat of a checkered past. So you jump onto Google and find out what sort of checkered past there is. Anyway, once I'd done a bit of digging and spoken to a couple of people that I highly respect in the property game in Auckland, where this company is based, I rang this client to tell him, do not invest with that company. That makes me very, very nervous. And we finally managed to get hold of each other a few days later after playing phone tag back and forward. And he'd put down $1,000 deposit to hold one of the properties, which he was now in dispute over.
We'll tell you what that dispute was about in a second, but I just want to go through, where we think there might be something off here. Now, actually, it wasn't in the rental figures, because when I went and looked at the median rents for Wellsford, seemed like they stacked up. So a 2-bed in Wellsford goes for about $440 median rate, median 3-bed $473, add them together $913. So look, the rental assessment broadly seems on par with what we'd expect a Wellsford property to go for. Median purchase price, $700K. I thought, God, that's not a lot of money, in today's market.
That's what I thought.
But $640K is the median house value in Wellsford. Usually would probably expect a bit more of a premium on a new build, but it might be a bit higher. But
particularly a home and income.
So it does seem quite low, but you think, well, it depends how cheap they got the land. But it was this director's thing. So why don't you just take us through what the checkered past was once you'd done your Googling.
Okay, so the checkered past comes in with someone who's not a director but working in the business.
Are we naming and shaming?
Well, yeah. Peter Shevin is the guy's name, Chevin. Google it if you want to have a bit of fun. He's working as an RMA and research consultant. And he does say, hey, look, I've got a colourful background. Colourful background is a bit of an understatement in my opinion. So he's a property developer who's been bankrupt 4 times, as far as we can find. And according to High Court documents in 2019, has criminal convictions for dishonesty offensive.
And I think that's probably the more important one because being bankrupt, yeah, that's pretty bad. That's it's not good. But, I mean, what you really want to do is work with people who are honest and people who have integrity. And this doesn't seem to be the case in this instance. So he did a bit of digging and we went and looked at the High Court documents because, of course, when I hear that somebody's, been convicted for some sort of scam, I want to know what are the mechanisms that they used. Now, it's just interesting to know. And actually, it's pretty bad if I'm going to be really honest. So this person, Peter, in this case, had registered a company on behalf of another company. So they'd set it up for a company called Avon Parnell Limited, which owned 2 properties. Oh, but naughty. What did he do? He kept the login details for the company's office. So he logs back in later to the company's office. What does he do? He changes the shareholding to a friend of his. So and then he goes to the bank and he says, well, my friend or business associate in this instance owns these 2 properties because he owns the company. Can we get some mortgage against this? So they get a $990,000 mortgage secured against those 2 properties and they transfer it into a bank account which they own. So what they've done is they've fraudulently gone out and said that this person owns these 2 properties. Let's get a mortgage against them. Bank says, yes, sweet. That's what it says in the company's office. But he wasn't the shareholder. He didn't have approval to change the shareholding for it. He had the login details, but that doesn't mean you can go in and change who the shareholder is. So they did it fraudulently. And because of that, the High Court had to step in and the legitimate shareholder had to come in, take them to the High Court, get their $990,000 back that had been essentially fraudulently leveraged against or fraudulently secured against the properties that they actually owned. So those are the dishonesty offences that had been committed, and really they're pretty bad. It's about as checkered as you could probably get.
It's pretty bad. And look, this guy isn't a director of the development company, but he is acting in a capacity, as far as I can tell, where he's promoting properties to investors. And look, he might also just not be a director because he can't be because of his checkered past. And I do think anyone who's willing to put someone in that kind of position who is a director themselves and dealing in an industry where there's a lot of trust and faith put into your company if you're parting with deposits and stuff like that, particularly with the history that we've had of Blue Chip and those type of companies, I would not be that excited about investing with these type of people at all.
If I had this on my record, Andrew, would you hire me?
Absolutely not.
But I'm a nice guy.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
You want to give me a second chance?
Yeah, absolutely not. No,
I probably don't deserve a second chance if you're doing that.
4th time bankruptcy, I feel like you've had your second chance.
Well, let me ask you this. So what happened with your specific investor because this is basically, we're kind of setting this up and saying, here are the warning signs, and actually something did go wrong in this instance. So what went wrong?
So actually it wasn't that this guy was concerned. He was happy to take the risk, which was really interesting, on this development firm, and he paid $1,000 refundable deposit to get a contract put together and put a property on hold. Now, the contract came through and it was subject to finance, I believe, and he wanted to run it past his lawyer, but he had like a 24-hour window in which to sign it, which, to be fair, in this hot market, it's not uncommon to kind of have a short window to get a contract back, but just with a finance clause is probably not enough. So he sent it to his lawyer. His lawyer said, oh, there's some stuff in here I don't like. Put a due diligence clause in, then we're all protected. Exactly what we would recommend to an investor putting a property on hold. Anyway, they put a due diligence clause, sent it back. the directors crossed it out, and then actually the option got pulled from him and offered to someone else. And so now they've gone back and said, hey, you can have your $1,000 back, bugger off. And unfortunately for the developers, that's not good enough for this guy. He was putting a property on hold and was told that he was going to be able to do that. So he is actually going to go for damages.
So what sort of damages might he be seeking in this case?
Well, I mean, I'd go for loss of a deal. I mean, you'd have to put together, if you miss out on a deal and then you go and put together a package and say, well, now because you've cost me time and money, maybe we've got $100,000 in lost opportunity.
Does he expect that probably would be it?
I'm just making that up, but that's what I would do.
Yeah, it could be tens of thousands, I'd expect it could be.
To be honest, I actually think he's just making an example of them, as I would myself.
But in that case, paying his $1,000, what sort of rights did that actually give him?
Not sure. I haven't read any of the paperwork. I haven't seen any of that. It was just, I was on the peripheral here.
Well, there was one other thing as I'm searching through my databases, which I don't think is the worst thing in the world. But I mean, this is probably, I want to give you an example about those directors at the specific development company that you can find in a database, which I'll give you the name of in a second, which I'd probably be okay with generally. But once you start to add it all up, you probably think it all sounds a bit dodgy. So it was one of the current directors of this company, Reed Myers. Name is Peter Egdon. There's too many Peters in this episode, 3 in total we've mentioned so far. They were fined in 2014 by the Real Estate Agents Authority for hiring a real estate salesperson who wasn't appropriately licensed. Now, to be fair, they were going through the process and they messed it up a bit, but they were found to have exhibited unsatisfactory conduct and were made to pay a fine in that case because they hadn't followed the rules.
If that incident in isolation was the only thing you'd find, I'd probably say that's not the end of the world. It's not worth striking them off potential developers. It's kind of this other stuff that just is a bit murky, and when stuff can go wrong and in the small amount of time that I've had to do a bit of due diligence and have exposure through these, people are already kind of having difficulty with them. Doesn't ring well to me.
So what can you do as an investor? I would suggest checking out this awesome website, the New Zealand Legal Information Institute, NZ Legal Information Institute, because they bring together a whole heap of different legal databases which you can search through. So when I wanted to go through and find the High Court proceedings, you can go through that and it will show you Supreme Court proceedings. It will show you Employment Court. It will show you the Real Estate Agents Authority and about 20 to 50 other databases, legal databases, where you can find public information. So I'd definitely be going to, NZLII.org.nz.
And you spend the whole weekend researching everyone, didn't you?
Well, of course I put your name out, Andrew. I would just say, what don't I know about my friend Andrew Nicol that might be in there? I searched myself. What might have I done that I don't know about? It is interesting. Now, again, just because somebody's listed in there for something small, you might say, hey, look, that's okay. But you're looking for patterns of things where people are not quite being as honest as you or I perhaps might like them to be.
And I just want to clarify, that case that you'll find on there about Ed, it was a complete misunderstanding and the old lady let him away with it in the end.
And so, Andrew, what's the big lesson here? What are we really trying to say to people?
I just think because we are in a market where it can be really hard to get a property and there can be quite stiff and competitive tactics happening between, but when people are trying to buy a property, you still just need to remember you want to make sure you're investing with someone, particularly if you're buying off plans or doing construction, that you're not going to give your money to someone that maybe isn't going to finish a project because there's a real risk to that.
Fantastic. Let's wrap it up there, but please don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. Really does help us get the message out to more people. And hey, don't forget, we have got our red carpet premiere coming up of our new video series.
What? What's this about?
I'm not allowed to tell you what it's about because we're not launching it or not telling anybody what it's about until our webinar coming up on the 6th of July. I think the week before, the Tuesday before. Now, if you do want to come along and hear about the government tax changes at that webinar, I'm going to drop a link to that in the show notes. Also in the show notes is going to be where you can sign up to come along to that red carpet premiere. But look, tickets are extremely limited. We've got, I think, about 150 seats that we can fill. Maximum. There are 178 seats in there. The staff, the team here at Opus Partners, they have begged and borrowed to make sure that we are going to have enough seats for them as well. So it's going to be highly limited, but it is going to be a fantastic night. If you are in Christchurch, you will want to come along to this. It is going to be a fantastic night. Walk down the red carpet, grab a couple of photos. There is popcorn. There is catering. There is going to be
autographs from Andrew Nicol.
Nobody wants that. We're trying to make sure they want to come out to this event. If you want to come along, tap a swipe over the cover art, link in the show notes, or go to opuspartners.co.nz. You'll be able to find the link there to go and sign up. Thanks for listening to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Edward Knight.
I'm Andrew Nicol.
I'm going to be back again tomorrow with even more daily strategies, tactics, and insights to help you get the most out of your property market. Until next time.